Hi everyone, this is Emily with VisArts at-home art videos. VisArts is a nonprofit art center in Rockville, Maryland. For more information, please visit visartcenter.org. Today I'm going to be showing you all how to paint this palm tree painting on a canvas or any other surface that you already have at home. We're going to be using acrylic paint for this. So these are some tips and techniques on how to paint with acrylics. This image is a simplified version of an image that we paint in our Cocktails and Canvas class at VisArts. Generally that class is for adults, but because I've simplified it, this should work for all ages. It's important to remember that when you're watching this video, you can change the image to be however you want. You do not have to copy exactly what I have painted. You can just use the techniques and create your own image from it, and of course keep practicing, keep creating. Don't worry if your painting is not exactly how you want, because practicing is important and creating art is important. So just have fun and keep learning and keep painting. Okay, so I have my canvas here. I'm using an 11 by 14 canvas for this. And I started by sketching my pencil lines. I'm going to go back over them with a Sharpie so that you all can see the lines that I made. So we have our pieces of land here. And everything in between the land right here is going to be the water. And then I have my palm trees. I'm doing really basic lines. You just need something to follow along with when we start painting. Okay, so we'll use this to get started. Before we start painting, we're going to mix some colors. So on my plate, I'm using just primary colors, red, blue, yellow, and then white and black. Really doesn't matter what kind of brushes you use for this, but if you have some big ones and some small ones, that'll be helpful. So I'm using acrylic paint for this. Any acrylic paint is going to be fine that you use for it. It's all going to kind of be the same process. So we're going to kind of challenge ourselves with mixing our own colors, our own secondary colors. It's always a good idea to mix your own colors rather than using the paint right out of the tube, if you can do it. So we're going to do that with the colors that we have. So we're going to start with blue. So we're going to start by making a light blue. We're going to use light blue for a big portion of this. So I put 2 whites on my plate here, and I'm going to turn one of these light whites into light blue. So when we are mixing colors, generally we want to start with the lighter of those 2 colors and slowly add the darker in. So if I'm making light blue, I'm going to start with my white and slowly mix my dark blue in. So I'm dipping my brush in the blue. I'm going to mix it into one of my whites. Okay, so pretty light blue. I'll mix a little bit more in. Okay. The next color I want to make is orange. So we make orange with red and yellow. So same thing as before, I'm going to start with my lighter color, yellow, and we want a lot of that. And I'm just going to dip my brush into the red and mix it into the yellow to make orange. So that was just a tiny bit of red that we used to get this orange. Another color I'm going to go ahead and mix now is pink. So I'm taking our white, dipping into the red to get pink. So it's always easier to go and make a color darker if you need, rather than going back and making it lighter. So you always want to start with the light, slowly add the dark. I'm going to add a little more white to my plate than what I have. Oh, I also want to mention, you can see that I'm just using a little bit of paint at a time. If we need more, we can always add more. Sometimes I see that people tend to add way too much paint to their palette to begin with, so we want to start with a small amount for each color. We can always add more if we need to. Before I start, I also want to say that I'm using a paper plate for my palette, but if you don't have a paper plate, you can also use tin foil. That's really good for a palette, or just a piece of paper. If you have your own plastic or wood palette, that's great. You can use that. In addition to my palette, I also have a cup of water and a paper towel. When we rinse our brushes off when we're painting, we want to wipe them off on a paper towel before we start painting again so that we don't have a dripping wet brush. It's going to get too much water onto our canvas. Okay, so we're going to start with our sky on our sunset. I'm going to start with my light blue. We want the blue to be on the top of our sunset. I'm going to mix a little bit more white into my blue as I go, and I can keep the paint moving. I'm going to mix more white into my light blue now, because we're going to start going lighter onto our painting. And I'm putting this lighter blue right next to the darker blue, so you can just do a stripe underneath, and then when we go to mix the colors together, we're going to hold our brush lighter, so touching it lighter to the canvas, just less pressure, and going back and forth. When you're blending colors like this, it's important to make sure you have enough paint on your canvas. If you don't have enough paint, it can get really sticky and it's not going to blend as well as we want it to. Okay, I'm going to start putting some yellow underneath the blue. When we are doing sunsets like this and we put yellow and blue right next to each other, we need to be careful not to mix them too much so that we don't end up with a green Generally we do not see green in sunsets, so we need to make sure that we're not mixing the colors too much so that we get a mixed color that we don't really want. I'm also going to add a little bit more white to my palette because that's going to help me blend the colors as well. So I'm going to start with putting yellow a little bit under the blue. So I left a little bit of white space between my light blue and this yellow. I'm going to go right on top of my lines. And my yellow. The next color I'm going to put in the sunset is orange. You all see when I made the orange on my palette, it's pretty dark. So I'm going to add a little yellow to it too to make a lighter orange to help us get this transition in the sunset. So I'm painting with the orange right on top of the yellow that I already painted for right now to help this blend together. So again, really lightly on top, not a lot of pressure to help it blend together. Okay. Now we can start using our pink. Ooh. I'm just going to mix a little bit of red into the pink. I'm going to go all the way down to my land. The land and the trees are all going to be silhouettes, so it's okay if we get paint on top of it because we're just going to paint them black. So again, really lightly, not a lot of pressure with my brush when I'm blending these together. You can see with this mixing, I'm just adding a little bit more white to colors as I go to help it, help everything blend once it's on the canvas. Another thing you can do instead of adding more white to colors is add a little bit of water, like the smallest bit of water to your brush to help your paint keep moving. Not a lot, just a tiny bit. Okay, I'm going to add a little bit more of the red on this side. Okay. So now we're going to deal with this white space we left in between our blue and our warm colors. I'm going to start by taking white and adding it in between. Go a little bit on the yellow and then a little bit on the blue. The white's going to be like a buffer in between so that we don't get green. And I'm going to take some of my warmer colors from the bottom and add them to the top for our transition. So some pink. Orange. A little more up here. Okay, so we have our sky. So now we're going to jump down and start working on our water. Okay, I'm going to start with a blue for the water. So we get some of our blue up here. And it makes a similar color. Okay. So we have some blue down. We're going to make a clear light source here in our sky so that we can use it as part of the reflection for the water. I'm going to add more white to the middle of my sky here. Okay. So this is going to help us determine where our light parts in the water are going to be. I have this other lighter blue that I'm going to add a little bit of, but if you don't have another kind of blue, that's okay. I'm just going to take a little of it. I won't cheat too much in this, only using our primary colors. Also, we're all going to have different shades of blue, shades of red, so our colors are not going to match completely. Alright, I'm going to start making the middle of my water lighter. So I'm using a flat brush for this, and I'm holding it right on the edge, right on the tip of the brush, going really lightly. Our darker areas. So now I'm going and putting darker blue on my edges, close to the land. Alright, so I'm going to take a clean brush now and use it to help me blend all of this in. I don't really want to add more paint right now, I just want to blend what we already have for a sec. Okay. A little more darker. So, water is going to reflect what we have happening in the sky. So we are going to add some of our colors in our sunset to the water. I just want to wait for our blue base to dry a little before I start adding other colors. We need to be mindful of what the colors are going to make when they mix together. So, like we talked about in the sky, if I started putting some yellow streaks or orange streaks in my water at this point, I'm going to get colors that I don't really want yet. So while we're waiting for that to dry, I'm going to go ahead and start working on my land. We're just going to be pretty simple because we're going to do it black for silhouette. Okay, I did my land here. We're going to go back in and mess with the water in a little bit. But first I'm going to do my palm trees. Okay, so for the leaves of the palm tree, make sure everyone can see. I'm going to start with a curved line for the top. Make our bottoms of the leaves like this. So you saw when I drew my sketch, I only did the top part of the leaf because we're just going to go in and paint the bottom. So just little curved lines. To the point. then we'll do our trunks. The trunks of the trees are going to be a little bit thicker than the tops. Okay, so we have our palm trees painted. Okay, so we're gonna work on our water now. So before we start adding our colors, I'm going to put a little more contrast in my blues. So I'm taking my dark blue and adding it to a few more spots. Okay. Okay, making sure my brush is really dry. Doesn't have any other colors on it. So now if you want, you can go through and add some of your sky colors. Okay. Adding some pink. Really light, just little swipes across our water. Some orange, some yellow. Okay, take a clean brush. We can blend. Okay. So if you all want, you could go through with a lighter color and add some more details to your trees. You know, like the detail on the trunks. I'm going to keep it simple and just keep them as this bold silhouette. For the sides of your canvas, if you're using a stretched canvas, you could, as you're painting, stretch the painting over the edges, or you can just go through and paint them all one color. I think black looks cool. It makes it look like a frame. So then it'll be ready for you to hang on your walls. So you can use any size or shape of canvas for this. Any brushes for this. All these tips that I gave about painting will work with any acrylic paint. So, okay, there's your sunset painting.